Good morning and welcome to the morning briefing. It's Thursday, February 3rd. It's episode 164, our snowy episode. I'm Phil Brandt, and with me as always is Burt Garland, shareholder with the Ogletree Deacons. We are your host of the program, and it is our goal to keep you informed so you can more effectively lead your organization. Hey, good morning, Burt. I'm working from home today. It's still snowing here. Looks like maybe we got about 7 or 8 inches west of St. Louis City in St. Charles County, but I know that much of Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana has been impacted by the storm. How has it impacted you, Burt?
Well, working from home today, Phil, but just got my video set behind me here. I need to grow a little bit apparently, but we've got probably what looks like about 6 inches out there.
Yeah, we didn't definitely get the worst of what they predicted, which is really good news. But personally, I would have bring it on. I take it all they have, right? I have a Jeep Wrangler, and I just like to get out and play like a little kid, and it's always a lot of fun.
Well, what time? I think they're saying it'll be done by 3, so it's still coming down a little bit, and you'll get your chance to go play today, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. I hope that's the case. So, hey, here's the question for you. How much snow did you get and where are you at? Would like to see that in our chat. We have a corresponding question for you in our poll for today. Producer Nick, can you read us the poll question?
How has the inclement weather this week affected your business? Option number 1 is we have been able to keep our offices open and operate as usual. We have been able to keep our offices open, but have offered remote work for some. We had to close our offices and suspend all operations, or we had to close our offices but are working entirely remotely.
All right, very good. Well, I can tell you, I can answer that question for AIM. We are operating business as usual, but remotely, which we never would have been able to do if it wasn't 2 years into the pandemic. So that's allowed us to keep the business open. I'm not sure why school districts are shutting down when they have the ability to work remotely. I would love for someone who is a teacher to tell me that answer, because it just makes no sense to me. The rest of the world does everything it can to operate remotely, and then school districts shut down when there's snow. And really for 2 years, we've had the ability to operate remotely. Now, I don't understand why that happens. Would love for someone to share that information in the chat, because I don't want to draw conclusions that everyone just wants the snowplow snow day.
They want to go out and play in their Jeep Wranglers, Phil, like you do.
I understand that, but I am working. Here I am with you bright and early on this snowy morning. All right, we got a great program lined up for us today. A few things we're going to get to. One is I want to talk a little bit about performance management. It's that time of the year where we're wrapping up performance reviews, and there's a few do's and don'ts I want to share. I've had a lot of questions over the last few weeks about that. As always, we have questions from you, our listeners, and also there's a new job report out and some really alarming numbers that need some interpretation that I think would make good sense to discuss as well. But Burt, let's get into performance management for a moment. And one of the things that continues to surface year after year when it comes to performance management, I've had to deal with it myself during written performance reviews, is really when we get into documenting someone's performance, good, bad, or indifferent. Over the years, and I'd say 30 plus years, I've had documentation help us. I've had documentation hurt us. I've had the documentation be irrelevant when we get into legal problems that come back to performance reviews in some way. Can you give us some idea of, when is it good documentation, what means helps our situation during a lawsuit or an unhappy employee, and when does documentation hurt us? What are some of the tips maybe we can follow?
Yeah, so of course, from the lawyer's perspective, you've heard me say it and you've heard other lawyers say it, document, document, document. That's sort of the key to performance management and hopefully the ability to defend a potential lawsuit or charge of discrimination against the company. If you don't have it documented, it's almost as if it didn't happen. It becomes somebody's word against somebody else's word. Documentation that is prepared at the time of an incident is generally deemed inherently reliable because it's prepared at a time when the parties are not necessarily adverse to one another and they're not necessarily anticipating litigation. And so documentation that is contemporaneously prepared is generally a significant aid in the defense of a case. Now, that's not always the case because sometimes that documentation has things in there that you don't want in there. And so people who are documenting need to be trained and educated on how to properly document. But from my perspective, from the attorney's perspective, documentation is absolutely key to being able to prevail in a case. And when I say learning how to document, trying to be fact specific, kind of asking or documenting the who, what, where, when, and why of the incident that took place without trying to characterize too much things about the employee, just trying to be factual, instead of, describing the employee as rude and, using cuss words right and left. You can describe it more as the employee was insubordinate and that they engaged in profane behavior. I know it's a little bit nuanced there, but you want to try to stay away from characterizing the employee versus documenting the facts. You want to make sure that you're not putting anything in the documentation. It seems like it's obvious, but I'll say it anyway.
I know it's not obvious. We need to say it because even myself, I get into this and it really becomes very difficult. My emotions set in and a supervisor or a manager's emotions set in, and it's just a few words that makes all the difference. A few words that are documented.
Yeah,
that are bad.
That's right. And some examples of that would be, Phil, obviously you want to stay away from characterizing anybody because of their protected characteristics, like, talking about she does not perform as well as her male counterparts. Like I said, it seems obvious, but you don't want to characterize it in terms of gender. You don't want to characterize it in terms of age or race or religion or disability, et cetera. You want to focus on the facts and preferably objective criteria. An example of this would be one that I took up in front of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, the full 8th Circuit. I got to go downtown and argue under that big dome in the federal building with 12 judges peppering me with questions all at the same time. We ended up winning the appeal 9-3. But one of the issues in the case was there was an older employee, and this is a reported case out there. You can go look it up. You can probably Google my name and Superman or Superman cape. And the reason why I bring that up is that apparently one of the allegations was that a supervisor had told an older employee who had gotten ill that maybe it's time to hang up your Superman cape. And that older employee turned around and sued and used that as one of the allegations to support the age discrimination claim. And I think it's really important that, he could have phrased that a little bit more articulately by, not referring to hanging up the Superman cape and just focusing on the illness that the individual had and whether they could properly perform the essential functions of the position. So you want to make sure that your folks who are documenting things are trained and educated. One thing I will mention, Phil, is that we've seen a trend in recent years of companies going away from performance reviews. Not all, but there are some that have gone away from performance reviews. And one thing that you've heard me say many, many times is, what's worse than having a policy? What's worse than not having a policy at all? And the answer to that is what? I'm going to put you on the spot.
So ask that again, Burt. What's worse than not having a policy at all is a policy that no one follows correctly.
That's exactly right. You've learned something from me over the years, Phil. That's exactly right. Having a policy that you don't follow is actually worse than not having the policy at all. And so if you have a policy that says you're going to do annual performance reviews and you don't do those, that's actually worse than just taking that out of your policy. If you're not going to do the performance reviews, take it out of your policy. Don't say you're going to do them. However, that being said, I, as the attorney, do like the performance reviews because, again, it helps tell the story generally. You can usually, not always, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but you can usually look at the performance reviews and see if they've been done properly. You can see a pattern that's developed over a period of 6 months, a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years, where the employee's performance is degenerated. And that can be told through the performance review. And like I said, that documentation that's been prepared contemporaneously with the events is inherently reliable. Now, one of the very important factors here is that employers are honest in those employee reviews. And I've seen dozens and dozens of cases over the years, literally dozens, more than I can count on all my hands and my fingers and toes. And you get a call from a client and the client says that we want to terminate this employee. They've been the worst employee we've had for the last 3 years and we're ready to pull the trigger. And they explained to me what the employee did to warrant this decision. I said, that's great. Sounds like you're on solid footing. Go ahead and send over the personnel file so I can just take a look to see what's going on, make sure there's nothing in the file that causes me any concern. And let's say, for instance, we're sitting here on, what is it today? February 2nd today. And we're, February 3rd, that's right, February 3rd. We're sitting here on February 3rd and they send me that personnel file and the person just did something egregious about a week ago and they want to terminate the employee. They send me that personnel file. I start looking for the reviews and lo and behold, I see the review that was completed in December just last year in 2021. And guess what that review looks like, Phil?
Yeah, it's got all kinds of things in it, doesn't it?
It's stellar. The individual is just the greatest employee. They get 5s across the board, 5 being the highest. They overperform, overachieve. And now I'm being told that this employee, I'm being told by HR that this employee is an absolute disaster and they need to be fired. Well, that's the type of documentation that's going to hurt you. And so I think from the employer's perspective, especially from HR, you again need to make sure that the documentation is being done properly. One of the other very important things, and we live in an era, and it's probably been going on for the last 20 plus years, we live in an era and it goes across, it starts probably in kids sports and in grade school and continues all the way through college with grade inflation. And employers that are evaluating people on a 1 to 5 scale, I try to encourage employers to recalibrate that scale. Be open and honest with the employees on the fact that you are going to recalibrate that scale. But a number 3, a meet expectations, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. A number 3 is that is reserved for that employee that shows up at work every day and does their job. That is not a 4 or a 5. That's the employee that meets your expectations. And it may be rare that you have an employee that meets your expectations. And the temptation is to give them the 4 and the 5. But the employee that shows up every day and just meets the expectations, they're there every day, they don't cause problems, they don't, they do their job without any fanfare. They don't go above and beyond, but they're doing what they were hired to do. That's the number 3. That's the employee that meets the expectations. The employee that causes aggravation, has poor attendance, has poor work product. That's where you use the 2s and the 1s. And the employees that go above and beyond, they pitch in wherever it's needed. They do what's asked. Sometimes they don't even have to be
That's
asked.
enough. You don't have to keep bragging about me. Thanks.
Yeah, they don't even have to be asked. They take the initiative. Those are the 4s and the 5s. And here's the problem. When you start giving those employees who show up every day and just meet expectations. When you start giving them the 4s and the 5s, that means that you aren't able to truly distinguish the real 4s and 5s from the people who are just meeting the expectations. But more importantly, you aren't able to effectively rate the employees who are below expectations. So an employee that is causing aggravation and is not having good work product and doesn't have good attendance, if they end up getting a 3, which is a meets expectations, I can promise you that that will come back to haunt you during litigation. So it's very important to try to weed out that practice of grade inflation. And if you do that, it is very important that you set the expectation of the employees. If you've been giving the meets expectations employees the 4s and 5s the last 10 years, and you're all of a sudden going to eliminate the grade inflation, you need to be transparent with the employees on why that's being done. You might want to put a memo in everybody's employment file so that you can clearly establish, if you need to, in litigation down the road, that you are, resetting that scale to more effectively reflect what's being done in the workplace. So back to your point, Phil, documentation is absolutely key. If it's not done properly, though, it can come back to haunt you in litigation. But if it is done properly, it can be your best friend in litigation.
Yeah, no, that's great insight. And then I think you covered exactly all the points I have experienced, what usually leads me to trouble and what doesn't. And it really comes down often to, do my managers and supervisors, are they all on the same page of what performance is and is not, good and bad and great performance? As well as how to have the conversation and how to record it properly. And that takes training and education for our leaders. No other way around it, or else everyone's going to be all over the board. I've seen it many, many, many times. All right, so I asked a question to the audience, and Ashley and Megan gave me some good feedback. Why would our school districts close down if we can do distance learning? And great feedback. Ashley is saying that their district has taken the position that it's a much needed break for staff and students, given the past few years of stressful situations. Like that, maybe we should give our employees off some days just for that reason. That sounds like it makes good sense to me. I'm being sarcastic, of course. And then I think
Phil,
yes.
real quickly with Ashley's comment, a very close friend of mine who's a teacher and friends with administration in the district reaffirmed exactly what Ashley said there, that the district has taken the position that the staff and the students, a snow day is a good way to sort of decompress. They're built into the schedule. And so it's sort of an unplanned little break, but it is a welcome reprieve from the day in and day out of school, especially during COVID, where people are still largely masked up and that type of thing.
Yeah, and I understand that. It makes perfect sense. I mean, we should add more time off on top of spring break, fall break, holiday breaks, the Monday holiday, all the things that we give. I'm obviously being sarcastic, but I do understand that. Also, Megan made a good comment here that their school board, she can't speak for all districts, but in their case, the parents voted not to have e-learning days because they didn't want to take the joy of the snow days away from the kids. This is what's going to be in our workforce in a very short period of time. Let's just keep that in mind. When we try to send people home with computers to work from home instead of the office, and they're going to be, well, we need a much needed break, and you're going to try and run your business. I always worry about how we set kids up to be successful in the future. But that's good feedback. Thank you both for that feedback. All right, Burt, you ready for me to get off my soapbox?
Good feedback, Phil. But you are pointing out the realities kind of on the flip side there, and then the flip side also means that it creates issues for parents who do still have to go into to work, especially in manufacturing, or people who are in office settings, even though they are able to work remotely. when the kids are home, it changes the ability to get that work done. So it's not an easy call for the districts, and it's certainly not an easy call for the parents. We appreciate the pros and cons of a snow day.
No, for sure. Personally, I'm in favor of the snow day because I love it. I told you in the beginning, I want to get out in my Jeep. That's my sled, and I want to have fun. But I think about that as it relates to the job report, Burt. I don't know if you got a chance to look at the job report, but it's got some astonishing numbers in it.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. I think if I recall, in December there were about 700,000 jobs added in December, which was great, but still below normal seasonal hiring. This month, or for January, they were Wall Street was largely expecting the addition of 200,000 more jobs. ADP came out with its data yesterday, and not only were 200,000 jobs not added, but an additional 300,000 jobs were cut. And this was not expected at all. Private payrolls fell by 301,000 for the month. So that's about a 500,000 job swing. And, you know, it's really the first time that ADP reported negative job growth since December of 2020. So we have to go back a while, and I think we're starting to see the effects of inflation out there and the economy really slowing down, the supply chain problems taking its toll. About 154,000 of those jobs were in the leisure and hospitality industry. 62,000 of those job cuts were in trade, transportation, and utilities. Manufacturing also lost 21,000 positions, while education and health services reported a drawdown of 15,000, and construction that fell by 10,000. One of the things we know that part of this is attributable to is a lot of people where companies have instituted vaccine mandates have decided they're just not getting vaccinated, and so they're leaving their jobs. And so, but in this case, where the private employer payroll fell, again, I think it's largely attributable to the economy and continued effects of COVID.
Yeah, those are astonishing numbers when we look at that. I have a few thoughts on it. If I base that on what we see in our background verification business, which, much like ADP, they're using the data that comes in from payroll organizations and background checks to give us indicators or tell us the trend. Our background verification business was a little slower in the beginning of the month, but man, it really picked up in the second half of the month. And I'm just curious if we won't see maybe a wave come in February, making up for maybe some of the slowdown in January, because the numbers are increasing very slowly, but every day, I would say since January 17th, 18th, somewhere in that time frame. So that's one indicator. And two, I think there are still a lot of baby boomers who are exiting and not enough people entering the workforce, which I think contributes to that decline. When the baby boomers retire, they're done and they're out. And we have to have an equal number to come in behind them and enter the workforce. And I always think that's a catch-up effort. And simply put, there's really not enough people, if you do the math, to fill the roles.
Well, and I think that's right, Phil. As we've talked before on the program, the studies that I've read have estimated that between 5 and 7.5 million people literally disappeared from the workforce during COVID. And, there's probably not enough people coming in behind to fill those vacancies of that 5 to 7.5 million people. But it's even further exacerbated by the fact that companies that are instituting vaccine mandates, those employees who are not going to get vaccinated, that shrinks the pool even further, at least for a lot of employers, those employers that have those vaccine mandates. So we're in a tough spot right now, and you may be seeing the uptick in the background verification process because additional employees are quitting because they're just not going to get vaccinated. And so these aren't necessarily new positions that are being filled, but companies desperate to backfill existing positions.
Yeah, I do believe the majority, and based on our survey data, the majority of the positions being filled are replacement positions, not positions of real industrial growth.
Right.
Hey, Nick, can we get an update on the survey and the poll question of, what organizations did as they were impacted by the snow?
Absolutely. So we are number one answer, most popular answer, the survey says we have been able to keep our offices open, but we have offered remote work for some. And we also have, we had to close our offices, but are working entirely remotely is coming in pretty high too. And then the last couple where we just have a few in this boat is that we have been able to keep our offices open and operate as usual. Just as many of those had to close their office and suspend all operations. So we're finding that normalization distribution, aren't we?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Nick, real quickly. So the section in that the second darkest or the second, that one right there. So we had to close offices, but are working entirely remotely. Yeah, I mean, just think of what that would have looked like pre-pandemic. There's just no way that would have been that high. I mean, by my quick estimate here, that looks like, close to certainly more than a quarter of the businesses have been able to shift and pivot and have at least been able to partially or completely work remotely. And that is one of the positives, I think, of the pandemic, is that businesses were able to put in place policies, procedures, and infrastructure to be able to work remotely at levels that we never could have anticipated previously.
Absolutely. I think that is, one of the good things, if we consider that a good thing. Unfortunately, we don't get the emotional break as our children have gotten there. But I think that is absolutely a great result for us to be able to continue to provide service. If you have to go to the manufacturing, drive fork trucks, be on a production line, obviously there's no cure for that. But those are very, very interesting results. One thing I want to chat about, Burt, we only have about a minute and a half left. I want to get to one of these questions that came in as a result of our last poll question. If the company, this comes in from Yvonne, if the company has the ability to allow employees to work from home during a COVID event, typically work from home, why would the remote employees be penalized? And that question came in as a result of asking employers, are they considering changing the work from home policy benefits from those who have to come in and work on campus? And she's seeing it as penalized. And I know you and I both have spent a lot of time with organizations helping them draft their PTO vacation policies and such. Any thoughts to her comment there?
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of take the position that that's a penalty. And I think the way we brought this conversation up, Phil, last time was that there are some employers out there who, when they approve an employee's request to work from home or to work remotely, that those employees may get a little bit different paid time off bank, sick leave, vacation, or PTO. And the reason for that is that when the employee is at home working remotely, they have more flexibility to accommodate things like the plumber or the electrician coming to do some work at the house, or to let the painter in, or to do those things. Where somebody who, on the flip side, somebody who, for instance, is working in a manufacturing facility, if they have something going on at home or certain doctor's visits, etc., they actually have to take time off work and leave the facility to go accommodate that need at home, to let the electrician in, to let the plumber in, et cetera. And so, again, kind of interesting to characterize that as a penalty when the work, the remote work policy is really designed to be a privilege to the employee. And with that privilege may come a little bit different PTO type schedule.
Yeah, I think absolutely. That is exactly my experience. And I know I've been having a lot of fun with snow days and kids and so forth. But, even as simple as if my kids are off school, we saw, moms and dads having to take off in years past because you don't have childcare arrangements and not always able to work from home at that point. Where now, okay, well, I can work from home while my kids are on a snow day, possibly. Again, avoiding PTO time versus someone who has to take off and doesn't have that ability. So I do think there's a balance there, and time will tell which direction we take. But about 10% of our listeners responded that they are considering changing the policy. Not that they considered. Only roughly 5% had said they have changed the policy.
Phil, I know we're drawing to a close here, but take a look at the poll question, the responses again. Nick, if you can put that back up.
Yes.
Interesting. After we made our comments about the ability for employees to work remotely, look at how this poll changed.
I think we have just found that Burt has another talent, and it's a spokesperson. Anyone that wants them to drink their soda over the others, have Burt holding it in his hand, and you got to win it.
He's our social influencer.
Yeah.
All right, that's the end of our program today. We will see you back here next Thursday. Get out and build a snowman and have a good time. Enjoy some time off if you can, and snow angel, whatever it is that you like to do in the snow. And we will see you next Thursday, Central Standard Time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tell your story, promote your products, communicate with your employees and customers vividly, dynamically, and powerfully. Whether it's a company video, recruitment video, online training, or live meeting, Feature Group can help you, from scripting to highly polished finished production. Whether it's live or on demand, we have the skills and equipment to wow your audience and drive your message home. Feature Group USA, the one-stop shop for all your broadcasting needs.